Dr. Devra Davis, founder of the Environmental Health Trust. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on. And you were recently spoken to by a story concerning the potential regulatory headaches involved in the rollout of 5G, which is one of the sort of like tech things that everybody is sort of waiting for, and it's taking a long time, but there are still concerns about what it could mean. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those concerns?
Well, certainly. What we know is that when you test the 5G millimeter waves in experimental protocols with cell cultures, we can accelerate the growth of bacteria and viruses. We know that the millimeter wave that will be used in 5G, it actually can damage the eye. This has been established, and that's why standards are set for military use. Now, in fact, 5G is not just millimeter waves. That's what a lot of people don't appreciate. What will happen with 5G is it will take antennas, and we'll need 1 million more new ones than we currently have. Mm-hmm. And they will have to be located about 100 yards apart from one another in the urban environment. Think about that. And in addition, you'll have to be cutting down trees, and they have potentially damaging effect on animals. Now, you're taking signals that currently are 4G and 3G that work for the phone that I have here on airplane mode, and you are bringing them closer than they've ever been to human beings in history. Because right now they're in antennas, often on top of mountains or tall up, which is where they're supposed to be. And 5G is going to bring them, and in many cities they've made rules that they can have them 8 feet above the ground. Mm-hmm. And that's going to give us proximity not just to the millimeter wave, but to 3G and 4G. And there have been a lot of mistaken ideas about what 5G really is, but it's not just one thing, that's for sure.
Okay, so what I'm curious about is, it's as you've laid out, it's a different technology in a number of different ways, potentially quite significant. So in terms of evaluating the potential health hazards of this new technology, what sort of process has it gone through? I mean, I know we as a country, we're looking into the deployment of this technology, but it's also going on in other countries. So are we doing the rollout in a different way than other countries? How is this being handled in terms of health concerns?
There are no tests underway, nor are any planned on the health or environmental impact of 5G. This violates the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires an assessment of any major environmental regulation. And it's an incredibly arrogant approach that we're taking. It's sort of, trust us, we're going to build this thing. We don't really even have standards yet for how it's going to operate. And that sign that you're holding up there about 5G kills brain cells in bees, we actually have data on the honeybee that have been developed by Swiss engineers, many of whom are supported by industry. And those data show that if you have a honeybee and you make a model of it with three-dimensional imaging, you can resonate perfectly with the body of the honeybee with 5G. And those scientists who produced that study warned that if we release 5G, it can have an effect on the ability of honeybees to function. Now, this is not just a theoretical concern, because studies were done with 3G and 4G phones where they took hives and they put the phones into the hives. Now, of course, bees don't make phone calls, so we know that's not exactly very realistic. But they did put a hive with a phone in it that was not working, one where it was working, and then one as a control. And what they found after just a few weeks of operation, which was the hive where the phone was on, the honeybees did not come back to make honey. Now, honeybees are one of about 1,000 different pollinating insects. Pollination is absolutely critical to agriculture. Right now, as you may know, there's a business booming of people driving around to farmers with trucks with hives in them because there are so few bees in certain areas to pollinate, whether it's for wine or other agricultural products.
Yeah.
So we have a big problem now.
So I think you've rightly laid out the threat in that area. In terms of potential effects on humans, because as you point out, they're going to be deployed throughout cities and things like that. Let's say worst case scenario, the government does not update their standards, doesn't institute any sort of new regulations in terms of making sure that this technology is safe, and it is deployed all around. How quick, what would the turnaround be on perhaps independent scientists tracking any negative health effects? Or is this a thing where hypothetically it might take a while and some of the damage might be baked in before we find out what effect widespread 5G access actually has?
That's a really good question, and I'm really glad that you asked it. The answer is complicated. In fact, we do not expect people to drop dead from 5G. It's not that kind of signal. However, the problem is the effects that we do anticipate are general. Things like headache, problems with sleep. There may be more serious problems, such as an increase in heart attack or stroke. And those things, which are general, it will be very difficult to pinpoint that 5G is a cause of those things. But here's what we do know. Studies, again, have been done where they take blood from people who live closer to cell towers today, within, say, 50 meters, compared to blood of people who live perhaps 1,000 meters away. 1,000, okay? And they have found molecular markers in the blood of people who live closer to these 3G and 4G antennas now that are indicative of inflammation and predictive of an increase in cancer risk. That's blood work. It's not a question of people being biased because they see a tower and they don't want it there and then they tell you they have a headache. There's actual data that has been published in the peer-reviewed literature showing these damaging effects, biological effects in people. So you will hear, for example, that 5G signals, again, the millimeter signal, doesn't get very deeply into the skin. That's true. It only gets about a 64th of an inch in. But guess what? The skin is our largest organ. And we now understand from scientific work that's been published just a few months ago that the skin is actually an immunological organ. That means it's part of what helps the body to protect itself from cancer, from other diseases. And it's been well documented to play a major role. You know how you feel when you've been indoors working too long in front of your computer screen and you go outside and the sun is shining and you get some sunshine on your body and you feel good about it? That feel-good feeling isn't just for your skin, is it? It is a systemic response. So your skin has a systemic function. And the idea that it's just some kind of paper-thin barrier, and so therefore it's impervious to 5G because it doesn't get into the body, is biological nonsense. But yet, that statement has been driving the United States and other countries to push the 5G process. Now, fortunately, there are a number of countries and a number of cities around the world, including in the US, that are waking up. And frankly, I just was reading an article today by a telecom expert that says 5G is a huge scam. The standards don't exist. We're going to build the system because you need to put all these antennas together before it can work. Then we're going to use public utilities to put it on telephone poles and street lamps that the city has built. And then we're going to charge you to use the signals that we put through this public resource. And by the way, you're going to have to buy 5G routers and 5G phones and 5G computers in order to get the full benefit of it. Unless, of course, you already have the 5G-enabled coffee pot, washing machine, and baby diaper. And I'm not making it up. Those all exist. But the reality is this is a huge marketing opportunity. And it has not been subjected to any safety testing. Full stop.
Okay, and I know that you recently, just a couple of months ago, you had an op-ed published in the CHICAGO TRIBUNE that people can look to for more information. Dr. Devra Davis, we really appreciate you joining us on the show today.
I'm delighted to talk with you, and I'd look forward to talking further.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.